when a man is elected and is the President of the United States, he is the Commander-in-Chief. However, there are some things that I think most people are concerned with, and that is maybe an absence of adherence to the rule of law and to the convention that is between the legislative branch and the executive branch.
Educate, inform, inspire. The Dan Parsons Show, a podcast that lifts up instead of tearing down.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Dan Parsons Show. I'm your host, Dan Parsons. Coming up on today's show, retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Bob Krist. And Bob also happens to be a former Nebraska State Senator and candidate for governor. Hey, and my shout out and thanks to Friends of Dan, the Patreon membership club. If you like this episode, be on the lookout for a bonus behind the scenes clip exclusively for Friends of Dan. If you're not a friend of Dan yet, hop on over to thedanparsonsshow.com to sign up. Okay, here's my interview with former Nebraska State Senator Bob Krist. Enjoy. It is my pleasure to welcome former Nebraska State Senator Bob Krist for his inaugural visit to the Dan Parsons Show. Bob, welcome aboard.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Bob is a former Nebraska State Senator and retired Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Air Force. Bob represented the 10th Legislative District, northwest portion of Omaha, Bennington, and north central portion of Douglas County from 2009 to 2019. Senator Krist served in the nonpartisan Nebraska legislature as a Republican, joined the Democrat Party in 2018 and was the Democrat nominee, challenging Republican Governor Pete Ricketts in 2018. And I believe now you're a registered independent. Is that right, Bob?
That's correct. Yeah.
Well, let's get the tough questions out of the way first. I know from experience that anytime you pop up on the news or a podcast, people want to know when you're going to run for political office again.
Never say never, but I've got a great gig right now. I am teaching at the University of Nebraska at Omaha Aviation Institute.
Nice.
And giving back my 43 years of aviation experience to anybody who will listen. I'm having a great time there. So it's going to take, I told John Bartle the other day, it's going to take a lot to get me back into politics. But as I said, never say never.
That's smart. As somebody that's been on that journey with you a time or two, I think that's a smart political position to be, to say never. But, well, good for you. That sounds like a pretty damn good lifestyle, Bob.
Yeah, it is. I was happy to do it.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned in my opening, in addition to your public service in the legislature, you served in the United States Air Force from 1979 to 2000 and retired as a lieutenant colonel. During your time in the Air Force, you held key leadership positions, directing critical missions, including the flying missions on the Looking Glass EC-135 aircraft based out of Offutt Air Force Base. And for those not familiar with the Looking Glass, it's a 24-hour flying command post for a strategic air command in the event of a nuclear war. Colonel Krist also served in both Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. And in 2014, you were inducted into the Nebraska Aviation Hall of Fame. So thanks for your service, Colonel.
No, thank you. I think that's a good intro for my political life starting again. Huh?
There you go. But I wanted to get your thoughts on the situation in the Middle East, specifically the operation to bomb Iran's nuclear facilities.
Sure.
And so what, you've maybe talk a little bit about your experience and how it might relate to what these Air Force pilots did last weekend.
Well, I'm not a stranger to extremely long missions. The RC-135, Reconnaissance 135 that I flew, had several different types. One was called a Cobra Ball, and it was part of the strategic ballistic missile treaty programs internationally. So a lot of geopolitical things going on. But my longest mission was 29 and a half hours from Offutt to near the Middle East. It's actually Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. Multiple air refueling. So what those gentlemen and ladies saw on the B-2s was an extremely long day. And from takeoff to target area and then back, 30 some hours, I think, is what they said in terms of the actual. Those are long, hard missions. I think those folks that participated in the program, both the maintenance people, the ground people, the planners, the strategic planners in this case, and tactical planners, to actually execute that kind of a mission is extraordinary, particularly in the cloak of darkness and also in secrecy. So hats off to those guys and gals for doing what they did.
Because there's not many, as I read, there's not many crew on that B-2, right? It's a fairly small crew.
Yeah, it's a 3-person cockpit, I guess, as I remember it. So you do have an option for some rest time, but essentially, it's 2 people up there that are doing the job all the time, and that's a lot of load.
So, any idea on how many times they would have had to have been refueled on that flight?
I would guess they would have had at least 5 refuelings, maybe 6.
Wow.
One on coasting out, one basically coasting in, and maybe pre-target, and then coming out probably the same way. But I'm not an expert on the B-2, obviously, so I don't want to say that that's the only thing that was there. But there were multiple air refueling, suffice to say, to get to the target and to get home safely.
And that process alone, Bob, has to be an incredibly difficult maneuver, I suspect, and very dangerous. It could be, I suspect.
It can be. That was actually one of my favorite things to do.
Really?
Tucking in behind the tanker and getting a full load of gas to continue on. It was challenging sometimes, particularly when it's not smooth air, or when it's pitch black outside. Actually, sometimes getting together in the air is a trick, because the B-2 obviously is not squawking or talking; it's being stealth, and so getting together with the tanker sometimes can be a trick. I've had that experience with the 117s when we were flying in the Adriatic. So it can be challenging, but it's nobody's flying a B-2 right now today or flying our tankers that isn't a true professional at what they're doing. So hats off.
That's why you train hours
Right.
and hours and hours. So maybe give our audience a snapshot of some of the missions that you've been on, Bob, because I know, again, because I've known you for a while, just some incredible experiences. Maybe talk about one of those memorable experiences and your crew and your team. And I don't know, I'll put you on the spot, but I think people are naturally curious of the role of the Air Force in our military might and what those experiences are like.
Sure. Well, I guess one of the most memorable times for me, I was actually flying a tanker in the war in Bosnia, and they shot down an F-16 while we were up in the air. We tankered in some A-10s for close air support, and they actually rescued, and the rescue folks came in, and they actually picked up the pilot and got him home. And I was part of a team. That was a smaller crew. I mean, we had 3 pilots on board and 2 navigators and a boom operator.
So describe that aircraft, Bob.
Yeah, it's the tanker is the KC-135, which is probably one of the airplanes that refueled the B-2. It's a Boeing 707 kind of prototype, been around for many, many years. Air Force acquired them in the 50s, and they're still flying airplanes. Re-engined several times, and now the most sophisticated engines around. It's high bypass fans, and so it's a great airplane. Another one of my missions I talked to you about was a long one. We took off because they were launching missiles off the Kamchatka Peninsula, and they asked us to go out and find out. We thought it was a new prototype, so we took off out of Offutt, got on scene with an airplane called the Cobra Ball, and collected data on that particular launch. And that's what that airplane does in support of the ballistic missile treaty. And that's so important because, and that was early on. That was actually just right about the end of the Cold War. So, but it's always challenging to put, particularly in the RC-135. There's potentially 35 crew members on board. 2 pilots, 2 navs, a Raven, which is an electronic warfare officer, and then a whole back end full of people who listen and look at things on the ground and keep everybody safe. So it's reconnaissance aircraft, and it was taken from the Cold War mission into the tactical mission when we went to war in Desert Shield and Desert Storm.
Yeah. Fascinating. Thanks for sharing that. I just appreciate, I know our audience does. I just think we're all very curious at this moment. So back to this bombing in Iran and how the president and his administration has handled it. There's apparently some question about the assessment of the mission. And I don't think that's unusual. Again, from your experience, feel free to give your thoughts. But I think for me, what has been disturbing, and I'll just dive into the political side of this, I think what's been disturbing as reporters have been asking this question, and apparently this one assessment was leaked prematurely that said that it was indeterminate about the effectiveness of the mission. And so President Trump and his administration seem to be going out of their way, criticizing reporters for daring to ask that question, and then equating it to challenging the people who carried out the mission and their loyalty. And so, anyway, what's your thought of that whole assessment and the political fallout from it?
So, first of all, when a man is elected and is the president of the United States, he is the commander in chief. So from my perspective, it changes my political view. I believe that he was elected by the people, and as such, he is our president. However, there are some things that I think most people are concerned with, and that is maybe an absence of a adherence to the rule of law and to the convention that is between the legislative branch or the Congress and the executive branch, and when you go to war and how you keep the Congress involved and also communicate with them both pre and post. Okay, so from that perspective, I would say that the mission was carried out as professionally and as quietly as it can be. So hats off to the Air Force and anybody else who was involved, including
Absolutely.
the Navy, by the way.
Yes.
Everybody who was involved, including the planners. Once the mission is complete, then, of course, knowing our president, he wants to make sure that everybody understands that we did a great job. And he used the word obliterate, which is absolutely not in the vocabulary of any assessment people in DIA, Department of the intelligence people, right? Or any other proper assessing process. But that's the word he used.
Yep.
Of course, then what they call a leak is actually From my perspective, maybe not so much a leak as it was the results from phase one of the assessment process.
Okay.
The phase one assessment process includes military satellites, any kind of picture you can take. In the old days, they would have sent over a U-2 to take pictures of it, and I'm not even sure that they didn't do that, or we're not doing it still. But satellite imagery, both commercial and military. And from what they could see, there were huge craters where they intended to hit. So they hit the targets. The issue is, were the GBUs effective enough to go down to the point of destroying what they wanted to destroy? And the other question that's been coming up is, was all that enriched uranium still there?
Yeah, because there
was a question about whether they trapped some of it out before the attack.
Yeah.
So that's a horse of a different color, and they're going to have to figure that out. But there's at least 5 different phases of that assessment process. We've seen phase one. Yep, you hit the target. Yep, the bombs did what you thought they were going to do. Nope, we don't know if all the tunnels were destroyed and all the capability is destroyed. That will be the other assessment. Follow-on assessments will be done to say they don't have the capability to revive the centrifuges and to do all the things they needed to do. So at the beginning of it, maybe it's just a confusion and the use of the wording of obliterate. Did we put the program behind? I think the Israelis did a pretty good job of putting the program behind. They claim it's years behind. I think that the soft assessment of saying a month behind is pretty pessimistic, if you ask me. We've all seen the crater holes on whatever news broadcast you're watching.
Yep. Just
the fact that they went 300-400 feet down with the GBUs the way that they did, they had to have influenced some negativity down there, for sure. So I guess that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's good, Bob.
And I think what we're seeing now is Congress demanding that both sides demanding a little bit of communication.
Well, and again, bringing up the role of Congress, these are tough times. There needs to be a check on this president, as any president, and that comes in 2 forms in our way of government, and the courts and in the legislative branch. And for whatever reason, he didn't inform, at least not all of the members of Congress, of this was happening. And in fact, just today, or maybe it was yesterday, I forget now, but there was supposed to be a briefing on Capitol Hill that got canceled. And so, I think there's a challenge, a continued challenge with this president of Congress having that check on his administration. Not only this, but, obviously the immigration issue and tariffs and everything else. And so, anyway, I just think from the political standpoint, we could do better.
Yeah, I'm curious because I haven't seen anything, any statement put out by retired Brigadier General, now Congressman Don Bacon. He has very similar experience to mine in reconnaissance. We were both planners. We both have looked at the assessment process and the evaluation process post-strike. He knows, and it would be a good opinion to seek. Hopefully, he's not influenced one way or another in terms of his opinion of militarily as a retired brigadier general, not a political entity. Right?
Well, and he has, and by the way, not that you're my backup, but I did have a request into the congressman today as well. So I
bet he's busy.
I suspect he is. So thanks for filling in. But we didn't get the brigadier general, but we got the lieutenant colonel. So well, maybe just diving into politics a little bit more, Senator. Just where are we at in this country with with this administration, just not even 6 months in now. And again, my observations, I think a lot of people's observations are that Congress really isn't fulfilling their role of being a check on the executive branch in the way that I think we would want. And there continues to be just kind of haphazard, again, whether it's this military reaction to this military planning, the tariffs, the war on trade, or the immigration. It seems like one day we have one policy and the next day something else is said and we have another policy, and businesses certainly can't keep up. And the immigration lawyers sure as hell can't keep up. I just interviewed someone earlier today for an episode about immigration. So anyway, maybe just your overall thoughts on this administration as we're 6 months in.
So I'm in his first go around, it seemed to me like the president, picked people on his staff in his administration that had experience that could speak to him about the way things were and help him do things the way that if he wanted to change them, the way that he would have changed. My big disappointment this time around is this president hired ex broadcasters and put them in positions that they were not qualified for. Yeah. And we've seen that. We've seen the kind of things that happen when you're confronted with managing a huge enterprise like the Pentagon and the Department of Defense, and having the experience of commanding a small platoon. Okay, it doesn't fit. Can you learn? You bet. I mean, are there talented people that can go from the mailroom to the CEO or the president? Some, not very many. But we're not talking about going from the mailroom to someplace and creating widgets. We're talking about lives, men's and women's lives, and the act of going to war, which we are at right now. So I guess that's been my big disappointment, tainted by the fact that I spent 21 years serving this country. The other thing that I would say is that I've been very disappointed in certain people and personalities that I've known pretty well and have served with in both the legislature in the state of Nebraska and the folks that I knew when I was in the legislature. Seems like there's no confronting the obvious. They just roll over and play dead. Yep. Now that's a generalization, and I'll probably hear from people that I know about generalizing to that extent. But you know what? It's happening, and that's what happens. It always happens, no matter whether it's a Democrat in office with a Democrat Congress or a Republican with a Republican Congress. When you have the majority, you can do whatever you want to do. Problem is, today, even more so, that majority is not fulfilling their obligation and creating a check and balance. Yeah. I said when I was in the legislature, if I was appointed by Governor Heineman, and he came to me in the first few days that we had a serious vote and said, "This is the way that I think you should do something." And I said, I thanks for your advice. But the point is, I had to look in the mirror in the morning and be happy with the guy that I saw. So I didn't do exactly what Dave asked me to do. I didn't do exactly what Pete asked me to do. That's an understatement, by the way. But keep going. Yeah, well, you know better than I. You know best. The point is that I'm disappointed in the personalities and the professionalism of some of the people that are there. But it's very difficult, and I'm telling you, I understand. I can empathize. I can't sympathize, but I can empathize. If you're not going to get your funding for your campaign and you're not going to be able to come back, then you have to make a choice. But let's face it, nobody, if they're not elected back to Congress, is going to not be able to feed their children. So, those are decisions that have to be made, and they're tough decisions. Yeah, no doubt. Well, Colonel, former Senator Bob Krist,
Thanks for spending a few minutes here on the Dan Parsons Show. How in the hell I haven't had you on before now? Forgive me. I don't even think I had you on the old podcast where we sat around and drank beer. So anyway,
No,
we are due for a beer, by the way.
Yeah, and I would have come to both of those, by the way. But so all you have to do is ask.
Oh, you were on my radio show once.
I was.
That's
I was
right. Okay. Whew, I haven't completely ignored you. All right.
But I enjoy being a second choice to a congressman.
Oh, well, let's not make this so long in between doing this, Bob. I appreciate your service, not only to the state of Nebraska, but to our great country in the Air Force. So thank you. Thank you, sir.
Well, Dan, keep doing a good job.
Hey, yep, that was exactly what I was hoping for from former State Senator Bob Krist. Bob, you are welcome on this show anytime. Thank you for showing up on the show today. Okay, before you go, remember to leave your comments below on our YouTube episode. And if you like it, show us some love. Okay, that's today's show. Thanks for tuning in. Now go do good things. I'm Dan Parsons.